Sarah Mitchell stood at the kitchen window of their small Chicago apartment, watching raindrops race down the glass pane. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee mug that had long gone cold. It was 7 in the morning, and James hadn't come home yet. Again. This was the third night this week, and she felt the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. They had been married for 12 years. 12 years that had started with such promise, such joy, such absolute certainty that they were meant to be together forever. She remembered their wedding day like it was yesterday. The way James had looked at her as she walked down the aisle, his eyes glistening with tears of happiness. The way he had whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," during their first dance. The way he had promised, in front of everyone they loved, to cherish her in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death did them part. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. Or maybe everything had changed. Sarah heard the key turning in the lock and felt her body tense. James walked in, looking exhausted, his tie loosened and his shirt wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Hey," he said quietly, dropping his briefcase by the door. "Hey," she replied, her voice flat. She wanted to scream. She wanted to ask him where he had been, why he kept doing this to them, why work had become more important than their marriage. But she had asked these questions so many times before, and the answers never satisfied her. "I'm sorry," James said, running his hand through his hair. "The Henderson account, there were complications. We had to work through the night to fix the proposal before the morning presentation." Sarah nodded, saying nothing. She had heard variations of this excuse dozens of times. The Henderson account, the Morrison deal, the Pattison merger. There was always something, always a crisis that required his immediate attention. Always a reason why he couldn't come home, couldn't make dinner, couldn't remember their anniversary. "Sarah, please say something," James pleaded, moving closer to her. "What do you want me to say, James?" Sarah finally turned to face him, and he could see the pain in her eyes. "That it's okay? That I understand? That I don't mind sleeping alone most nights while you're married to your job?" "That's not fair," James said defensively. "I'm doing this for us. I'm trying to make partners so we can have the life we've always dreamed about. The house in the suburbs, the financial security, I never wanted those things as much as I wanted you," Sarah interrupted, her voice breaking. "I wanted a husband who comes home. I wanted someone to talk to at the end of the day. I wanted the man I married, not this stranger who shows up occasionally to sleep and shower." James looked stung. "I'm still that man, Sarah. I'm still the guy who loves you more than anything. I'm just trying to build a future for us." "We don't have a future if we don't have a present," Sarah said softly. "I feel like I'm losing you, James. I feel like I'm living with a ghost." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with truth. James wanted to argue, to defend himself, to make her understand the pressure he was under at work. But looking at his wife's face, really looking at it for the first time in weeks, he saw something that terrified him. He saw resignation. He saw a woman who was tired of fighting, tired of hoping, tired of waiting for things to get better. "I don't know what to do," James admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to fix this." "Maybe we need help," Sarah suggested. "Maybe we should see someone. A counselor or therapist." "Because I can't keep living like this, James. Something has to change." James nodded slowly. The thought of marriage counseling felt like an admission of failure, but he couldn't deny that they needed it. "Okay," he agreed. "We'll find someone. We'll figure this out." Sarah wanted to feel hopeful, but she had been disappointed too many times before. Still, she nodded. "Okay." They stood there in the kitchen, two people who loved each other but had somehow lost their way, and neither of them knew if they could find their way back. Sarah Mitchell stood at the kitchen window of their small Chicago apartment, watching raindrops race down the glass pane. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee mug that had long gone cold. It was 7 in the morning, and James hadn't come home yet. Again. This was the third night this week, and she felt the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. They had been married for 12 years. 12 years that had started with such promise, such joy, such absolute certainty that they were meant to be together forever. She remembered their wedding day like it was yesterday. The way James had looked at her as she walked down the aisle, his eyes glistening with tears of happiness. The way he had whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," during their first dance. The way he had promised, in front of everyone they loved, to cherish her in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, until death did them part. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. Or maybe everything had changed. Sarah heard the key turning in the lock and felt her body tense. James walked in, looking exhausted, his tie loosened and his shirt wrinkled. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Hey," he said quietly, dropping his briefcase by the door. "Hey," she replied, her voice flat. She wanted to scream. She wanted to ask him where he had been, why he kept doing this to them, why work had become more important than their marriage. But she had asked these questions so many times before, and the answers never satisfied her. "I'm sorry," James said, running his hand through his hair. "The Henderson account, there were complications. We had to work through the night to fix the proposal before the morning presentation." Sarah nodded, saying nothing. She had heard variations of this excuse dozens of times. The Henderson account, the Morrison deal, the Pattison merger. There was always something, always a crisis that required his immediate attention. Always a reason why he couldn't come home, couldn't make dinner, couldn't remember their anniversary. "Sarah, please say something," James pleaded, moving closer to her. "What do you want me to say, James?" Sarah finally turned to face him, and he could see the pain in her eyes. "That it's okay? That I understand? That I don't mind sleeping alone most nights while you're married to your job?" "That's not fair," James said defensively. "I'm doing this for us. I'm trying to make partners so we can have the life we've always dreamed about. The house in the suburbs, the financial security, I never wanted those things as much as I wanted you," Sarah interrupted, her voice breaking. "I wanted a husband who comes home. I wanted someone to talk to at the end of the day. I wanted the man I married, not this stranger who shows up occasionally to sleep and shower." James looked stung. "I'm still that man, Sarah. I'm still the guy who loves you more than anything. I'm just trying to build a future for us." "We don't have a future if we don't have a present," Sarah said softly. "I feel like I'm losing you, James. I feel like I'm living with a ghost." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with truth. James wanted to argue, to defend himself, to make her understand the pressure he was under at work. But looking at his wife's face, really looking at it for the first time in weeks, he saw something that terrified him. He saw resignation. He saw a woman who was tired of fighting, tired of hoping, tired of waiting for things to get better. "I don't know what to do," James admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to fix this." "Maybe we need help," Sarah suggested. "Maybe we should see someone. A counselor or therapist." "Because I can't keep living like this, James. Something has to change." James nodded slowly. The thought of marriage counseling felt like an admission of failure, but he couldn't deny that they needed it. "Okay," he agreed. "We'll find someone. We'll figure this out." Sarah wanted to feel hopeful, but she had been disappointed too many times before. Still, she nodded. "Okay." They stood there in the kitchen, two people who loved each other but had somehow lost their way, and neither of them knew if they could find their way back. The first week of James's leave was strange. He woke up on Monday morning, and instead of rushing to get dressed and out the door, he found himself sitting at the kitchen table in his pajamas, drinking coffee and watching Sarah make breakfast. She kept glancing at him as if expecting him to disappear. "This is weird," she finally said, a small smile playing at her lips. "Good weird or bad weird?" James asked. "I don't know yet," Sarah admitted. "I'm not used to having you here." That statement hit James harder than he expected. His wife wasn't used to having him around. What kind of husband had he become? Dr. Martinez had given them a new assignment. Each of them was to make a list of things they missed about their relationship, things they used to do together that had fallen away. They were supposed to share their lists and pick one activity to do together each week. That evening, They sat on the couch with their lists. Sarah went first. "I miss our Sunday morning tradition," she read. "When we first got married, we used to sleep in on Sundays, then make a huge breakfast together and read the newspaper. You'd do the crossword puzzle, and I'd read you interesting articles. We'd spend half the day just being together." James smiled sadly. "I remember. When did we stop doing that?" "About 3 years ago," Sarah said quietly. "Right around the time you started working Sundays." He nodded, making a note. "What else?" "I miss taking walks. We used to walk around the neighborhood after dinner, talking about our days, making plans, just enjoying each other's company. I miss cooking together. I miss laughing together. I miss—" Her voice caught. "I miss feeling like you actually wanted to be with me." James felt like he'd been punched in the gut. "Sarah, I always want to be with you. Then why does it feel like you've been running away from me for years?" Sarah asked, tears welling up in her eyes. James set down his list and pulled Sarah close. She resisted at first, her body stiff, but eventually she relaxed into his embrace. "I wasn't running from you," James said softly. "I was running towards something I thought we needed. But I was wrong. I was so focused on providing for our future that I forgot to live in our present. I forgot what actually makes life worth living." They held each other for a long time, and when they finally pulled apart, James picked up his list. "I miss hearing you laugh," he read. "Really laugh the way you used to. I miss our movie nights. Remember how we used to pick the worst possible B movies and make fun of them? I miss cooking together and making a mess of the kitchen. I miss dancing with you in the living room at midnight. I miss waking up next to you and actually having time to talk before the day started. I miss knowing what's going on in your life, what you're thinking about, what you're dreaming about." "I miss us," Sarah wiped her eyes. "So what do we do now?" "We start over," James said. "Not completely. We've got 12 years of history, good and bad. But we start rebuilding. One day at a time." They decided to start with Sunday mornings. That next Sunday, James woke up early and started making pancakes, Sarah's favorite. When she walked into the kitchen, surprised by the smell of breakfast cooking, he handed her a cup of coffee and kissed her forehead. "Good morning." "Beautiful." Sarah felt something flutter in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years. "Good morning." They spent the morning like they used to, reading and talking and just being together. It felt awkward at first. They had forgotten how to simply exist in each other's space without tension, but gradually they relaxed. Over the next few weeks, they worked their way through their lists. They started taking evening walks again. James's firm wasn't happy about his leave, but he held firm, telling his supervisor that he had a family emergency that required his full attention. It wasn't a lie. They also continued their sessions with Dr. Martinez, who helped them navigate the difficult conversations they had been avoiding for years. In one session, Sarah finally admitted something she had been afraid to say. "I'm scared," she confessed. "I'm scared that as soon as your leave is over, everything will go back to the way it was. That this is just temporary, and then I'll be alone again." James wanted to promise her that wouldn't happen, but Dr. Martinez stopped him. "Don't make promises you're not sure you can keep," she advised. "Instead, tell Sarah what you're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen," James thought carefully. "I'm going to set boundaries at work. No more working past 8 unless it's truly an emergency. No more working weekends except once a month. I'm going to put our weekly date night on my calendar and treat it like the most important meeting of my week. And I'm going to keep coming to these sessions because we're not done healing yet." "What if the firm won't accept those boundaries?" Sarah asked. "Then maybe it's time for me to look for a different firm," James said. "Or maybe I need to reconsider whether making partner is really what I want. Because I've realized something these past few weeks. I don't want to be the kind of partner who has a fancy title but an empty home. I want to be the kind of partner who's actually present in his marriage." Sarah reached for his hand, and he squeezed it. "I want to trust you," she said. "I want to believe that things can be different. But I need you to know that I can't go back to the way things were. If this doesn't stick, if you go back to working 80-hour weeks and forgetting I exist, I don't know if I can do this anymore." It was the closest Sarah had ever come to mentioning divorce, and the word hung in the air between them, unspoken but present. "I understand," James said quietly, and I don't want to lose you. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure this does stick." Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. "This is good. You're both being honest about what you need and what you're afraid of. That honesty is going to be crucial as you move forward." As they left the session, James felt both hopeful and terrified. Hopeful, because he and Sarah were actually communicating again, actually trying to fix what was broken. Terrified because he knew the real test would come when he went back to work, back to the pressure and the demands and the constant pull of his career. But for now, he was here. And he was going to make every moment count. 6 weeks into James's leave, something unexpected happened. They had a fight, a real knockdown, drag-out fight about something completely stupid. Sarah had bought the wrong kind of coffee, and James had made a thoughtless comment about how she should know by now what brand he liked. Sarah had snapped back that maybe if he had done the grocery shopping any time in the past 3 years, he could buy his own damn coffee. And then they were yelling, really yelling, about coffee and grocery shopping and all the little resentments that had been building up over the years. About how Sarah felt like she had to manage everything in their household alone. About how James felt criticized for every little thing. About expectations and disappointments and all the ways they had hurt each other. Intentionally and unintentionally. Finally, exhausted, they both sat down on the couch. And then something surprising happened. They started laughing. "We're fighting about coffee," Sarah said, shaking her head in disbelief. "Really expensive coffee, though," James added. And that made them laugh even harder. When they finally caught their breath, James pulled Sarah close. "I'm sorry. Not just about the coffee comment, but about all of it. About making you feel like you had to do everything alone." "I'm sorry too," Sarah said. I think I've been holding on to so much anger that I've been looking for reasons to be mad at you. Even about stupid things like coffee. Maybe that's progress," James suggested. "Maybe we needed to have a stupid fight to clear the air." "Maybe," Sarah agreed. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've been thinking about something. About why I'm so angry. And I think it's because I've been grieving." "Grieving?" James asked, confused. "Grieving the marriage I thought we would have," Sarah explained. "When we got married, I had this vision of what our life would be like. Growing old together, actually spending time together, being partners in every sense of the word. And somewhere along the way, I lost that vision. It felt like it died, and I've been mourning it." James felt tears prick his eyes. "I mourned it too," he admitted. "I mourned the husband I wanted to be, the one who always had time for his wife, who never let work come first. I became someone I never wanted to be, and I didn't know how to find my way back." They held each other, and for the first time, they weren't just apologizing or making promises. They were acknowledging the depth of their loss and their pain. And somehow, that acknowledgement felt like the beginning of real healing. In their next session, Dr. Martinez introduced a new exercise. She asked them to write letters to each other, not about their problems or their pain, but about what they loved about each other, what had drawn them together in the first place. James spent hours on his letter. He wrote about the day he first saw Sarah in their college literature class, how she had passionately defended a character that everyone else dismissed. He wrote about their first date, when they had talked for so long that the restaurant staff had to ask them to leave because they were closing. He wrote about the way Sarah always saw the best in people, the way she made him laugh, the way she had believed in him even when he was a struggling law student working 3 jobs. Sarah's letter was equally heartfelt. She wrote about James's kindness, the way he always stopped to help strangers who needed directions. She wrote about his determination, how he never gave up on things that mattered to him. She wrote about the way he used to look at her, like she was the most precious thing in the world. She wrote about his laugh, his terrible jokes, the way he sang off-key in the shower and didn't care who heard him. When they read their letters aloud to each other in Dr. Martinez's office, they both cried. Because they realized that the people they had fallen in love with were still there, buried under years of hurt and neglect, but still there. "I still see you," Sarah said, looking into James's eyes. "The real you. I forgot to look for a while." "I forgot to let you see me," James replied. "I was so busy being successful, James, that I stopped being just James," Dr. Martinez smiled. This is beautiful. You're remembering why you chose each other. Now here's my challenge. I want you to date each other again. Not as the people you've become, weighed down by all your history and hurt, but as the people you were when you fell in love. Can you do that? So they did. They planned a date for that Friday night. Dinner at a small Italian restaurant, the same one where James had proposed 12 years earlier. Sarah wore the blue dress that James always said was his favorite. James brought her flowers, like he used to do when they were first dating. At dinner, they made a rule. No talking about work, no talking about their problems, no talking about therapy. Just getting to know each other again. Tell me something I don't know about you, James said, swirling his wine glass. Sarah thought for a moment. I've been taking painting classes. At the community center on Tuesday nights, James's eyes widened. Really? Since when? About a year ago, Sarah admitted. I needed something that was just mine. Something that had nothing to do with work or our marriage or any of my responsibilities. It's been wonderful. I didn't know that, James said, feeling a pang of guilt. A year. She had been doing something important to her for a year, and he hadn't even known. You never asked, Sarah said simply, without accusation. And I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd care. I care, James said firmly. I want to know everything. Tell me about the painting. What do you paint? Sarah's face lit up as she described her classes, the other students, the landscapes she'd been working on. James watched her, mesmerized. When was the last time he had seen her this animated, this passionate about something? Your turn, Sarah said. Tell me something I don't know. James hesitated, then said, I've been thinking about making a change. A big one. I don't know if I want to stay at the firm, even if they offer me partner. Sarah set down her fork, surprised. What? James, that's huge. Why didn't you tell me? Because I just figured it out myself, James admitted. These past few weeks, being away from the office, spending time with you, remembering what actually matters, I realized that I've been chasing something that doesn't make me happy. I thought making partner would be this great achievement, but now I wonder if it's worth the cost. What would you do instead? Sarah asked. I don't know yet, James said. Maybe find a smaller firm with better work-life balance. Maybe go into teaching. I've always thought I'd be a good professor. Maybe something completely different. But whatever I do, I want it to be something that allows me to have a life outside of work. A life with you. Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. We'll figure it out together. After dinner, they walked through the park where James had proposed. And they talked about their dreams. Not the dreams they had let die, but new dreams. Dreams that took into account who they were now and what they had learned. I want us to travel, Sarah said. Really travel, not just quick work trips. I want to see Italy and Greece and Japan and all the places we always talked about but never made time for. I want that too, James agreed. And I want us to buy that house we always dreamed about. Not some massive mansion, but something cozy with a big backyard where we can have barbecues and plant a garden. I want kids, Sarah said softly. It was the first time either of them had mentioned children in years. They had always planned to have kids, but the timing had never seemed right, and then they had been so disconnected that the topic had seemed impossible. James stopped walking and turned to face her. You do? Sarah nodded. I do. But only if we're really okay, James. Only if we're really solid. I won't bring a child into a broken marriage. Then we'll keep working, James said. We'll keep going to therapy, keep communicating, keep fighting for us. Because I want that too, Sarah. I want to build a family with you. I want to grow old with you. I want everything we always dreamed about, but I want to actually be present for it. They kissed under the streetlight, and it felt like the first time all over again, nervous and exciting and full of promise. As they walked back to their car, hand in hand, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years, certainty. Not certainty that everything would be perfect or easy, but certainty that they were finally on the right path, that they were both committed to making this work, that the man she had married was still there, and he was fighting to stay. It wasn't the end of their struggles. They still had work to do, patterns to break, trust to rebuild. But it was a turning point. It was the moment they chose each other again. James's leave was coming to an end. In 1 week, he would be returning to the firm, and both he and Sarah were nervous about what that would mean for the progress they had made. They had spent the last 2 months reconnecting, rebuilding their relationship brick by brick. But they both knew the real test would be whether those changes could survive in the real world. James had a meeting with the senior partners to discuss his return. He had prepared carefully for this conversation, scripting out what he wanted to say, what boundaries he needed to set. Sarah had helped him practice, playing the role of the skeptical partner. "You're going to do great," she told him the morning of the meeting, straightening his tie. "Just remember why you're doing this. For us," James said, kissing her forehead. "For us," Sarah echoed, "at the firm." James sat across from Robert Carlson and Patricia Hayes, 2 of the senior partners. They looked at him with expressions that were hard to read. Not quite disapproving, but not exactly welcoming either. "James, welcome back," Robert said. "We trust your family emergency has been resolved?" "It's being addressed," James replied carefully. "Which is actually what I wanted to talk to you about. The past 2 months have given me time to reflect on my priorities and my career trajectory here." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Go on." James took a deep breath. "I'm committed to this firm and to doing excellent work for our clients. But I can't continue at the pace I was maintaining before my leave. I need to set some boundaries around my work hours. I won't be available after 8 p.m. except in genuine emergencies. I won't be working weekends more than once a month. And I need 1 evening a week, Wednesday, that's completely off limits for meetings or work events." The partners exchanged glances. Robert leaned back in his chair. "James, you know we're considering you for partner this year. These kinds of restrictions, they don't exactly demonstrate the level of commitment we expect from our partners." "With respect, sir, I disagree," James said, keeping his voice steady even though his heart was pounding. "My commitment to this firm has never wavered. In my 10 years here, I've brought in more billable hours than any other associate. I've won cases that others thought were unwinnable. I've mentored younger attorneys and contributed to this firm's reputation for excellence. What I'm asking for now is the ability to maintain that level of commitment while also maintaining my health and my marriage." Patricia tapped her pen on the desk. "Many of our partners manage to balance their personal lives with the demands of this career." "Do they?" James challenged gently. "Because I've seen the divorce rate among our partners. I've seen the health problems, the strained relationships with their children. I've been on that path, and it nearly cost me my marriage. I'm offering you an attorney who will work hard, deliver exceptional results, and model a healthier approach to this profession. I believe that's actually more valuable in the long run." There was a long silence. Finally, Robert spoke. "You've given us something to think about, James. We'll need to discuss this among the full partnership and get back to you." "I understand," James said. "But I need to be clear. These boundaries aren't negotiable for me. If this firm can't accommodate them, then I'll need to look for opportunities elsewhere." It was terrifying to issue that ultimatum, knowing he might be throwing away 10 years of work. But he had realized something during his leave. No job, no partnership, no achievement was worth losing Sarah. And if he had to start over somewhere else, then that's what he would do. That evening, James came home and told Sarah everything. She listened, holding his hand, her face a mixture of pride and anxiety. "What if they say no?" she asked. "Then we figure out plan B," James said. "I actually had lunch with Mark Davidson last week. Remember him from law school? He's working at a smaller firm now, doing environmental law. He said they're always looking for good people, and their culture is completely different. No one works crazy hours. They encourage work-life balance. Would you be happy doing environmental law?" Sarah asked. James smiled. "You know what? I think I might be. It feels more meaningful than corporate litigation, and Mark seems genuinely happy. When was the last time I could say that about anyone at Carlson and Hayes?" They spent the evening making contingency plans, exploring options, researching other firms and opportunities. It was scary, but also exhilarating. The idea that they could choose a different path, that they weren't trapped. 3 days later, James got the call. Patricia Hayes asked him to come in for another meeting. His stomach churned as he rode the elevator up to the executive floor. "James, sit down," Patricia said when he entered her office. Robert was there too, along with Thomas Chen, another senior partner. We've discussed your requests, Robert began, and they've sparked quite a debate among the partnership. To be frank, some of your colleagues think you're being unreasonable. They think you're asking for special treatment. James felt his heart sink. However, Patricia continued, there are others of us who think you might be onto something. Thomas here pointed out that we've lost 3 excellent attorneys in the past 2 years specifically because of burnout and work-life balance issues. And when we looked at our own lives, she paused, glancing at Robert. Well, let's just say we recognized ourselves in your story. What are you saying? James asked, hardly daring to hope. Thomas leaned forward. We're saying yes to your boundaries, with some caveats. We'll expect you to be flexible when true emergencies arise. Client crises, court deadlines, that sort of thing. But we're also going to pilot a new initiative across the firm, encouraging all our attorneys to set better boundaries. You're not going to be the only one leaving at 8 p.m. anymore. And the partnership? James asked. We're still moving forward with your consideration, Robert said. But we want to see how this new arrangement works out over the next 6 months. If you can maintain your excellence with these boundaries, then we'll have our answer. James wanted to jump up and cheer, but he kept his composure. Thank you. I won't let you down. We know you won't, Patricia said with a smile. Now get out of here and go home to your wife. It's after 7, and according to your new schedule, you should have left an hour ago. James laughed and practically ran out of the building. He called Sarah from the car. They said yes, he exclaimed as soon as she answered. They actually said yes. Sarah started crying, happy tears this time. Really? Oh my God, James, really? Really, he confirmed. It's going to be okay, Sarah. We're going to be okay. That night, they celebrated with champagne and takeout from their favorite Thai restaurant. They talked about the future with a lightness they hadn't felt in years. For the first time, that future felt possible, felt real, felt like something they were building together rather than something that was happening to them separately. I'm proud of you, Sarah said, raising her glass. For taking that risk, for standing up for what you needed, for what we needed. I'm proud of us, James corrected, for not giving up, for doing the hard work, for still being here, still fighting for each other. They clinked glasses, and as Sarah,